bounds at the 15, and there's 8 seconds to go.
Just get it in the middle of the field, take a knee, call a timeout, kick a field goal, and send it into overtime. Just purpose, take the snap, slide to your right, get it in the middle of the field, and call a timeout.
Starts Smith in motion. He's going to throw for it. He's got to throw it to the end zone. Lobs it up. One-on-one. Cut. Michigan touchdown. I can't believe this. Rory Roundtree. There's a penalty flag thrown at the 2.
Well, she's been there for many incredible moments. That might be one of the greatest that she's ever seen, but she's one of the greats that I've ever seen. The incredible Angelique Chengelis. When you see this play, it's got to bring back some memories, doesn't it?
It does. I mean, you know, for a reporter, Dan, I mean, it always brings back the deadline pressure and you know, you're rewriting your story as the game's going. And so that's the first thing I think about. But yeah, I mean, it was a great moment. Denard Robinson, Roy Roundtree, and it was a spectacular evening. I mean, it was the first night game at Michigan Stadium. There were so many, I mean, you know, playing Notre Dame, and it was really breathtaking. I mean, it was really a great performance. Denard Robinson, you can't forget Denard and that smile.
Can't forget Shoelace.
No, he was tremendous.
You've been there, as I said, obviously for many incredible moments. I thank you so much for joining us tonight. Well, you're only 30, so you started when you were like 2.
Right.
But you and I said this, we were getting ready for the show, and Dave, of course, the great Kingpin, is here with us as well, the better Rieger. You've always, not only have you done an incredible job in your career, we'll get into that in a second here, covering NASCAR, covering Michigan, so many things that you've done, but you're just one of my favorite people. Because you remind me, I mean, I say this with respect to you, you remind me of me, you're just a nice, passionate, exciting person that is nice to everyone. And we're very lucky to have you covering the teams and the things that you've done in this area. So I want to thank you for that off the jump, because you've always been super kind to me. I brought up the story that I hadn't been back to town for a while. I was doing a national show out of state, and I came in to do Radio Row, the Super Bowl 40, and we got to hang out for a while. And I could have had a better time with you. You're someone that a lot of people look up to, and I thank you for that.
Well, thank you. That's a great introduction. And I cannot equal your electricity, though, Dan. I just can't. Right, Dave?
So
I mean, he's like
no. He's always on 11.
Yeah, he is. That's a good thing.
There's so much that we want to get to you with. Dave's prepared an incredible Dan Leach one-on-one starring Angelique Chengels we'll get to in a little bit. 5 questions. I have no idea who they are, Angelique. Dave always finds some good stuff for us. But I want to get into Michigan football in a second, but I wanted to give people a chance because a lot of people know your story and where you come from, your career, covering NASCAR, covering Michigan football, and so many other things. But let everyone know kind of how it started for you, where you grew up, and kind of how you got into this business, and that you've obviously done such an amazing job covering so many things for all of us.
Yeah, I know. I have been lucky to cover a lot of things in Detroit, but I grew up in Cincinnati, big Reds fan, big Bengals fan, the youngest of 4, couple older brothers, older sister, and really loved sports from a very young age. And being in Cincinnati at the time, the big red machine, I mean, my God, how could it get better than that for a kid? And seeing back-to-back World Series and that great 75 team was, I get chills every time I
Big red machine.
It was great. I mean, I wore number 5 for Johnny Bench. I had a Joe Morgan poster on my door, my bedroom. I mean, it was just, it was great. And so I always love sports and I love competition. And I think that's really what I love most is I love competition. I like people seeing them perform at their best and seeing how people handle winning, how they handle losing. So this has been an ideal job. But I started out in Knoxville, Tennessee, covering Pat Summitt and the Lady Vols. And that was pretty amazing, and covered an NAI football team, Carson Newman, that won the championship. So I was covering a lot of winners. And I was heading to Memphis, and I had interned at the Detroit News after my senior year in college, right before I went to Knoxville. And I was just getting ready to go to Memphis for another job. And my boss in Detroit called and said, "Hey, we've got an opening for motorsports and Michigan football." And, you know, we used to make fun of NASCAR and stuff. I lived in Knoxville. And I'm like, well, okay. And I would start covering, I covered Daytona Speed Weeks that first year, and then I spent the whole month of May in Indianapolis for the 500, and I was hooked. I especially loved open wheel racing, but I've covered everything here, and it's been I love this area and all the sports that are here. I mean, you got everything here.
No, you do. And by the way, our good friend Tony Paul says, Angelique, can you bring me some Diet Cokes, please? And he also said, be very quiet. There's a strange man behind you. We'll get to that strange man in a little bit. But you have covered it all. And coming from Cincinnati and covering the Reds and then to Detroit. And I've been asking, like, we had Dan Milrod, who came from a different area, Stoney, who came from a different area. And I've asked them the same thing because it fascinates me. What did you think about this fan base when you first came here? When you came here in '92 to cover Michigan, it's, Bo Schembechler, then Gary Moeller. It's this, obviously they dominated Michigan State back then for the most part. Now it's much more divisive, and we'll get to that in a little bit. But what did you think about the fan base here in Detroit, and especially for Michigan?
Well, yeah, covering Michigan, I mean, I think you really get a feel for the pulse of the fans now with social media more than you ever did before.
Right.
Message boards. So the message boards were there before. And so, you'd hear people complaining or praising or, ripping us for us piece or, this one's too hard. So I got that sense. But now with social media, because I used to kind of go along with Woj would always joke about the blue hairs at Michigan Stadium. It was stadium. They're sitting on their hands. And, now I don't know what other fan bases are like now because I don't follow any other sports. I got a lot of Ohio State people and Michigan State people following me on Twitter. So I get a sense of what's going on there. But Michigan fans are passionate, and there's so many of them across the country. And, I appreciate their passion. Sometimes I think it goes overboard and they can be so highly critical of players. I've always been one of those people where you just, they're not getting paid. They're not professional athletes. Give them a break. Certainly you can criticize, can take people to task for their performances, but, sometimes it gets too personal and then it's like, gosh, people just scale back a little. But all in all, I love the passion. These are all people who want to read stories you post all the time. And,
right.
Always has, there's always an audience for Michigan sports and in particular Michigan football. But I've seen it covering softball and baseball in the postseason. It's crazy how they follow those sports.
Yeah, and listen, growing up, my dad went there, my grandpa went there, so I'm a Wolverine, as everyone knows, through and through. And I get, like, you at least get to cover it and not really have to deal with, because I'm more of an opinion guy, and they know I'm a Wolverine slap and a face painter, so you should see some of the nonsense that this, I know you see it anyway, that the Spartan fans come up with, but that, I call it the sickness, the rivalry, but I love it, and it's part of it. And I want to lead into this with Jim Harbaugh. And I got something that will show that you wrote about today about Harbaugh and cartwheels in a second. But when it comes to this team right now, and obviously we don't know if there's going to be a season. We'll talk about that in a little bit as well. But do you think that Jim Harbaugh, not just the fact that he's this huge figure, who's got it better than us, all that stuff, that he comes in and I'm not saying he's not winning, but he's not winning the most important games or even the 3 or 4 most important games and getting to Indy and getting to the playoff and all that kind of stuff. Do you think that he is adding to this Michigan State thing that makes it even crazier?
Well, I think when Jim Harbaugh got hired, I think everybody, it was such a drought at Michigan. Everybody saw him as the Messiah. I think Fred Heumann asked a question at the press conference. And, and he was playing the game for a while. I mean, he was on social media. He's out on, stages before rap groups go on.
Yeah.
It was drawing a lot of attention to Michigan. And I remember saying at his press conference, I was doing a radio show, and I thought by year 3, they'd be in the national championship picture. And I was almost right. And, they go to Ohio State, and the JT was short game. People call it, Michigan call it that. And they were close. They had gone into Iowa City with that great winning streak and highly rated, and Wilton Speight gets hurt, injures his left shoulder, and things started to crumble a little bit. And then they go into that double overtime game. They win that game. The narrative changes a little bit, doesn't it? Again, you can't play the what if game. The next year they had a great game plan and not the quarterback to execute it. They had a 14-0 lead over Ohio State. Then there's the trouble with the snap game. That was a game they should have won that game, and Michigan State played it to the end and they got that win. So those were a couple games that, you think, well, if you want to play the what if game, if they go Michigan's way, maybe the narrative's a little different, but it's not. That's not the way it is. They got L's in those games. And they still have a lot of work to do. And I thought that by heading into year 6, they would have been to the championship game at least once.
At least the Indy. Listen, for me,
Big Ten championship. Yeah.
Yes, at least get to Indy. For me, I said it last year, and I know that I took a lot of, because people know I'm a huge Michigan fan, but and that's why I think people maybe got frustrated because they know that I'm normally as positive as I can be. I always try to find the positives, but I was very hard. I mean, it's not personal, obviously, and Harbaugh's not a student athlete. I was very critical of Harbaugh last year. It's not that I don't think he's a good coach, Angelique and Dave. I just think that you bring a guy in, you pay him almost $10 million a year. He hasn't gotten you to at least Indy yet. You can't beat Ohio State. I thought, not that they're going to fire him, because I know the boosters that spend millions of dollars. He's as safe as, well, then maybe not as safe as safety be anymore, but still pretty safe. Am I being unfair? Are some of the fans being unfair to say, listen, it's not that you're a terrible coach, but Michigan can't become Iowa with Kirk Ferentz. It can't become Nebraska with Bo Pelini. You've got to start winning the most important games. And in my opinion, Angelique, you might disagree with me on this, if just at least the top 7 most important games, all the Ohio State games, Iowa, the 2 New Year's 6 bowl games, every one of those games is a loss. So I think what's the point, but it's getting to the point, well, what's the point? Am I being unfair?
No, you're not being unfair. I mean, that's a very reasonable approach to this. But I think your opinion, my opinion, doesn't matter, because Ward Manuel wants Jim Harbaugh there. He's happy with him. I mean, we did an interview before the season, and I know he feels the same way now. He knows they have to beat Ohio State. That everybody gets that. But he likes pretty much where the direction of the program's going. He likes that Jim Harbaugh thinks out of the box, takes the team overseas for spring trips. There's a lot of things that Jim Harbaugh does that Ward appreciates. And he's a guy who played for Bo. He's been a student athlete. He was a football player at Michigan. Then he was in the administration. He started working his way up and before coming back as AD. So they have a really good working relationship. And I think Jim Harbaugh stays as long as Ward Manuel says he can stay. There's been a lot of talk about, well, why hasn't the contract been extended? It will be. I mean, in due time. There's no panic there on either side of that. But I think it's fair to have expectations of Jim Harbaugh. It's fair to say that he hasn't accomplished this or that people thought he would by now. But it's all moot because Ward Manuel makes that final call.
I want to talk about, obviously, your thoughts on it. You think there will be a season this year? We'll get to Mark Schlissel's comments in a second. And, of course, the next couple of years of recruiting classes as it is right now, and some big gets that Michigan has got for 2021. But Dave, who's known you for a while as well, Dave, you mentioned you had 2 very fascinating stories of covering events with the Angel and the Big X.
Real quick, I look at the Jim Harbaugh situation kind of like the John Elway situation in Denver, where Elway's not going anywhere anytime soon. Harbaugh's not going anywhere anytime soon. Elway does have a Super Bowl. He did it by getting Peyton Manning as a free agent. He has not been drafting quarterbacks very well, and they've been down since that Super Bowl win. A Sasquatch missed pick, by the way. You want to throw that in there? But
how many times do I owe you?
But so I think it's the same type of thing. I think Harbaugh is going to be around until he decides to leave. Nobody's going to make him decide to leave, right. And I think eventually they'll probably get it right. Ohio State will is bound to have a down year, 1 or 2 years, and I think that Michigan will at least make it to Indy, and it will at least get the fan base, off his back a little bit, maybe. But as far as covering stuff with Angelique, so I covered Michigan for a couple seasons back in the Lloyd Carr days, and I just remember going to these Monday press conferences in Michigan, where the only reason that I was happy to be there was they gave us pizza afterwards. But I always remember that of 2 things. One, Lloyd only talked to Angelique. It seemed like he answered questions to anybody else.
Angelique's the star of the press conference.
And they never brought us anybody worthwhile. We never got Mike Hart to talk to. It was always like these random offensive linemen or defensive people. So it was just kind of like, it was just very weird to be there and to not be able to really ask a question to Lloyd, because he wasn't really looking at us. He was just talking. It was like one-on-one with Angelique. And then, but it was very interesting. And then also, I used to cover a NASCAR show back in the day, and I don't know if Angelique remembers this, but we we were both at Belle Isle with Helio Castroneves. And I just remember that, you know, he showed us the car, turned on the engine. It was really cool. It was very loud. It was a little bit different than a NASCAR sound, but those are probably the two times that our paths have crossed very, very infrequently in the business.
Well, I have to tell you, my Helio Castro, I don't think it was that time. And he was driving Roger Penske's bright yellow Porsche, giving media members laps around the track. And I was just I said, I just need to know what you're shifting here. Very calm. And because I get car sick. And we make the one lap and it's fine. And then he looks at me. I think we're going to go into the pit road. And he says, now we're going to have fun. And he guns it. And I just went back into the chair. And he's hitting these S curves in the back, and he's going 120. I was getting sicker and sicker, and he make a second lap around, and I yelled for him to stop. And he looked at me. I must have been completely ashen, and he stopped. And I got home, and I started driving home on 75. I was wobbling, and I had to pull off on 75.
Oh no!
From that ride. Yeah, always some good times.
I did an appearance with him once and a couple of other guys for the Detroit races. And race car drivers are awesome, so I know that.
They're great.
You know that.
They're great.
Had some of my shows in the past, especially NASCAR guys are just such good dudes, and they really appreciate the fans and being the media being a conduit to the fans through them. I don't want to get us too depressed, but I do have a big moment that you obviously covered during NASCAR that we'll get to in a little bit here. But when it comes to by the way, Mike on the chat said that as long as they keep losing Michigan to the Ohio State, he's a Buckeye fan, and Leach pays up on our Buckeye bets, we're good. Thanks a lot, Mike. Mike, by the way, says hi to you as well. It says, Angel the Big House. Yeah, he says, by the way, you're way more professional than Wojo is saying. And is Harbaugh, everyone knows that everyone's a cardboard box is more professional than Wojo.
That's
we
true.
love the
much. Yeah.
Yeah. But I want to talk to you about what's happening right now. We obviously know we're in the middle of a pandemic. We all miss sports. Sure. We all love sports. We all want them to come back. But U of M President Mark Schlissel came out, I think it was 3-4 days ago now, and said, listen, and I agree with him on this. As long as there are no students on campus, there will be not just football, there will be no college athletics. Mm-hmm. Do you feel like that's where it's trending? Do you believe we'll have a football season? And obviously, if we do have a college football season, my guess, even though the SEC and the Big 12 want to do their own thing, it'll be without fans. Where are you at with that right now?
Well, I mean, I have been up and down for the last summer. It's like, I don't think there's a football season. Then I think there is a football season. Last week, it felt like there was definitely this momentum before the Schlissel comment came out. And look, I mean, I've talked to the chief medical officer at Michigan a couple weeks ago, and she's part of this task force for the Big Ten commissioner. He's got Kevin Warren has there's a representative from every school, and she's the one from Michigan. And she was talking about, they are gearing toward having students back on campus as much as possible. But when you think about all the things they have to consider, how to make it safe, and if students, I mean, not just student athletes, if students test positive, where are they going to put them? They have to quarantine them. So they're probably going to have a separate dorm that's just for COVID patients if there were people who test positive. So there's so many considerations. I think there's a lot of students who still aren't going to feel comfortable about coming back either. So I don't think it's going to be, okay, it's fall, everybody's going back to Ann Arbor. And I think that they'll try to maybe do that, like Notre Dame's talking about going back home at Thanksgiving and not coming back. And I think that's something. So my sense now, from the get-go, Dan, I thought maybe they would start in October and just play a conference schedule. But, I talked to Chris Hutchinson a couple of days ago. He's an ER doctor at Royal Oak, former All-American at Michigan. His son's on the team.
Incredible.
He's been in the thick of this. I mean, I talked to him 2 months ago, and it was, this is going to get worse before it gets better. And now 2 months later, he's like, the curve is flattening. Things are going well. People have to wear their masks. People need to social distance. And he doesn't think the next wave will be as bad as maybe people have thought it might be. And, I trust him. He's an ER doctor. He's in there. He's not an immunologist. He's not, like which Mark Schlissel is, but he's in the thick of this. And I asked him, would you feel comfortable if Aiden played? And he said, absolutely, 100%. But again, there's going to have all these hoops they have to go through. They have to get these
so many moving parts.
baseline. So I think they'll play. I'm not sure what they'll do about fans. Maybe 20,000, maybe they'll have families there. Maybe they let the students in. I mean, look at Ohio State. They're talking, Gene Smith is saying 20 to 50,000. And Ohio State today sent out a letter to their season ticket holders saying it's going to be ticketless tickets. And, you just use your phone to get in. So they're getting those steps out there. So Ohio State's going. And, I think Michigan's I think Schlissel's saying the right things, but this is a gradual process. There's still about 100 days till the football season starts. And I think the other thing that Chris Hutchinson made a point of is the NFL is going to be out there first. So there's going to be a blueprint and they're going to see where this is going and college football can adjust. But yeah, you're right. The SEC's out there, you knew they were going to go out there first.
They don't care about anybody.
No, they're just, they're going to go play football
And Michigan State said that they're going to have some students on campus in the fall.
They are, and originally they weren't. So they've made progress.
Unfortunately, Dan and I have talked about this. There is a good chance that this virus could rise up again, and then what happens?
Sure. Right.
What happens if it gets bad again? And then they have to shut everything down again. Shut it
down. Yeah,
and that's where I'm at with this. And that's
right.
to the point about the different SEC and Big 12, the conferences. They can say whatever they want. If there's no one to play against, it defeats the purpose.
Right.
So you got to play. It's okay. I have no issue with throwing out, like you had mentioned and explained it beautifully, throwing these things out there, the NFL having the blueprint, all that stuff. But you've got to understand, I'm not saying us specifically, they've got to understand that if things do take a turn for the worse, you can't just push forward. You got to be, these are student athletes. These aren't pros. So that's the thing that scares me.
That's right. And that was one thing Ward Manuel said. He hasn't done any press conferences. He talked on a online talk show. And he said, look, I've never treated them as professional athletes. I won't. And, I'm not, he said he'd rather have the stadium sit empty than put them at risk. And look, this is going to be a drain on every athletic department if there's no football. We all know that football is what drives all of college athletics for every school. But I think a school like Michigan could go a year without pay financially, but you got to look at these MAC schools and these other schools. It's going to decimate a lot of programs. But again, you can't put that above the health. So these are going to be very important weeks coming up. But Harbaugh said today that I guess the NCAA, I haven't seen it, but he said that the NCAA said mandatory workouts, can start July 1st. So, I think everybody's forward looking on this in a positive direction.
Yes. Well, let's say they do play. Let's hope that's what the case is. And let's take a look at a couple of things here. And obviously, there's a ton of recruiting sites, but Angelique, you're the expert, so I'm going to go to you on this. This is 24/7 Sports. This is Michigan's 2020 class, ranked 14th nationally, of course, 2 in the Big Ten, to those stupid Buckeyes. And then obviously another great thing, and we'll get to that Harbaugh cartwheel video in a second. The 2021 class that, of course, just got Jalen Hood recently. That's ranked 5th nationally right now. And obviously, J.J. McCarthy, a 5-star, number 2 in the Big Ten. There's Jaden Hood right there, the 4-star linebacker from Fort Lauderdale State Thomas Aquinas, a great program when it comes to high school football. When you look at this year and next year, Angelique, as far as what Harbaugh has seemingly always done, he's recruited well, not necessarily turning them into great players, which was Brady Hoke's problem. How do you feel about 2020, 2021, and this team's possibilities in the next couple of years?
Well, I know that the favorite narrative lately has been Ohio State's just crushing Michigan in terms of 5 stars. Well, they are. That is a fact. They are. But I don't quite buy the whole thing that the talent differential is enormous between the two programs. I do think part of it's coaching and development. And we were talking about Michigan State, Mark D'Antonio a few years ago. Look at what they were doing with 2 and 3 stars, and look how they developed. Right. So I think coaching is a lot of it, and I really think that I felt like last year and the last couple of years, leadership wasn't quite there. I get the sense from talking to even to some of the freshmen last year at Michigan, there was definitely a accountability there, and definitely some rising leaders in this group coming up, like an Aiden Hutchinson, like a Quiddy Pay. I mean, you could even Chris Evans won't be a captain, but look what Chris Evans did. He was suspended for a year. He stayed in Ann Arbor, worked 3 jobs, delivering food sometimes to fellow classmates, and I'm sure that wasn't easy. So there's a lot of I think there's a lot of good leadership there. And again, that doesn't win you games, but it certainly helps. And it is about talent. But I talked to JJ McCarthy a couple weeks ago, and I mean, this guy's he's got a lot of personality. And, you know, that's why I think you want that in your quarterback. At least that's what I like. And Michigan hasn't always had that kind of rah-rah guy. And as Dave would know, Brian Greasy wasn't exactly that guy, but he was really smart and focused. But I think there's a lot of good talent here. And Blake Corum, I wrote about him yesterday in Thursday's Detroit News. I mean, everyone's saying he's as fast as advertised. So I talked to his high school coach, and this guy's got like, you know, gets up at 4:30 in the morning, works out every day. And he's a little bit, sounds a lot like Mike Hart, maybe size-wise, maybe a little bit smaller, but that speed and strong guy and is good in pass protection. So they've got nice pieces. If you're not if you're not sold on the fact that you don't have to have 18 5-stars, then this is a good class. And but would they like to have more? Sure. I mean, every program would. I mean, look at the NFL draft and all the 5-stars. So there's something to that. But I'm of the opinion. I don't love recruiting, but I think we know who the 5-stars are. I think we all know who the best players are. But when you get into 3 and 4, I think there's probably some three lights and 3 strong. That could be 4. So I think once you get 3 4s, they're good players. They're not 5-stars, but they can become 5-stars.
You said that beautifully. Jeffrey Bowles in the chat said we need the right QB, and that's definitely true. And listen, all due respect to Shea Patterson, I know he was the only guy invited to the combine that wasn't drafted, but he's found a place for now, Kansas City. Isn't it odd to you? And this goes back to the Harbaugh stuff. And
I would love to see him. I would love to see him get on the field in Kansas City. That'd be awesome.
Broncos
That'd be great. I
But
hope Shea Patterson makes the team. I hope he's a first stringer.
You're such a jerk.
It'd be great.
I love you, David. You're an idiot. It goes back to the Harbaugh stuff, Angelique. And listen, when Jake Rudock might have been their most successful quarterback during the Harbaugh tenure, and this guy's the quarterback whisperer, that's another reason why I'm trying to say I respect Jim Harbaugh's past. He took the Niners to almost a Super Bowl in 3 straight years. He turned around a perennial Power 5 doormat in Stanford. Even St. Diego in the FCS, back-to-back 11-win seasons. Why can't this guy find a quarterback? What's going on here?
It has been the knock on him that he hasn't developed these guys. I always thought he kind of mishandled the Brandon Peters time. I thought he should have played earlier, and I couldn't figure out why he wasn't, because I thought the more, and Brandon was a very quiet guy, and the more he played, the more confident he got. And that game when he got hurt at Wisconsin, he was definitely pulling them back into that game and was looking more like a quarterback that I thought he would be, because Harbaugh had told people he thought he'd be the next Andrew Luck, and clearly that didn't work out. He played well at Illinois last year, but this is a telling year. I mean, these are guys that they've developed. They didn't get a graduate transfer in this time, and I thought that would have been a mistake if Michigan had gone that route, because then quarterback and develop them. So this is going to be very telling to see Dylan McCaffrey and Joe Milton, finally in a competition at some point, whenever, and seeing go with those guys.
What's the story? What's the story with McCaffrey? Going back, obviously, to his Broncos lineage, obviously with his dad, and his brother, an absolute stud, who I wanted the Broncos to get so bad. But what's his story? I mean, he got hurt? He hasn't had really a lot of. Sometimes he goes out and plays receiver and all. I mean, is he that good? I mean, what's the skinny on this guy?
He is skinny, but he is quick, and he has had a couple injuries. I mean, they broke the shoulder, the collarbone. He was trying to get a little extra yardage against Penn State, I think it was, and then last year he had a concussion. So there is that. That's certainly something to consider. Is how durable is he? He is. I thought he looked extremely poised. Like here, that Notre Dame game in South Bend in 2018, he gets thrown in there. Shea Patterson cramps. He comes in. He looked very smooth, and I think he's got all the skills. He's home in Denver now, and talk about having great workout partners. His brother Chris, his quarterback at at Nebraska there. His dad's there, and the dad apparently brings out a garbage can and has the 2 quarterbacks throwing and dumping passes into this garbage can. So he's getting a lot of work. And so is Joe Milton. I mean, Joe Milton is, I think everybody's seen him. He's a physical specimen. He's got a huge arm. He's not as fast as Dylan. And it's now about here. The one thing I think is a plus for these guys is they're going into a second year with Josh Gaddis. That was a luxury that Shea Patterson didn't have. You know, he had all these offensive coordinators during his career, and there is something to be said for continuity. I mean, look at the defense with Don Brown. They like having the same guy in place, and that helps. And it'll help both of these guys going forward. And I asked Josh Gaddis because last year, if you recall, in July, Jim Harbaugh at the Big Ten meeting said that both quarterbacks would play. And I'm thinking, you know, Tom Brady, Drew Henson, that kind of thing again. And in the end, they ended up putting them both on the field at times, as you said, right. You know, lining up. And Shade sometimes at receiver. And so I asked Gaddis because I'm thinking in light of this COVID issue, you know, you've got to have 2 quarterbacks ready to go. I mean, you know, God forbid someone tests positive. Let's say you're starting quarterback, then your second starter better be ready to go. So I wondered if maybe they would play a platoon, as Harbaugh suggested last year, and Gaddis took it to mean both of them playing at the same time, and he laughed and said, "No, that won't happen again."
No Tebow Chris Leach situation. But it seems like we're so far away from it. But let's do this. Let's. I want to let you handicap this. And you mentioned Joe Milton a couple years ago. We all know practices are closed, probably to people except for you because you're the celebrity there.
They're closed.
But I do have a source that does some video work. I won't release that source though, but he did tell me a couple years ago that of all him, McCaffrey, and Patterson, that Milton had the best arm. Obviously, he was a freshman back then. If you had to handicap as of right now, and obviously no spring game, we don't know where these guys are at right now. And you mentioned McCaffrey in a good spot with Ed and Christian and all those guys in Denver. If you had to handicap day one, if things do happen this year, who do you think the starter is?
You know, I know the popular choice is Joe Milton right now. I know a lot of people said that. And look, I think his upside's tremendous. He is a phenomenal athlete. But I think that if you have to go into a season, let's say, I don't know how much practice time they're going to have, preparation time, I think you go with the guy who's had more game experience, and that's Dylan McCaffrey.
Yeah.
And I'm not trying to slight Joe, because I think Joe is more than a worthy candidate and being the starter, and very well could be. But right now, I think Dylan has a better handle. He's been in bigger situations, and I thought he handled them well. And I think he'd be the guy going in first.
Yeah, Sue, by the way, wants to also know the guy lurking behind you is, don't worry, we'll get to that guy behind you in a second. Jeffrey wants to know, are we getting these kids, obviously Ron Bellamy, the former Wolverine in West Bluefield, are we going to get these kids from West Bluefield? Donovan Edwards is a beast. That's kind of it could be a great pipeline, right, Angelique?
Yeah, I mean, Donovan Edwards won so high. I thought he was going to go to Ohio State. I really did. And then they landed their running back. So I think that Donovan, to me, that's a natural fit for him to go to Michigan. I think that would be a really smart move. And yeah, Ron Bellamy's really producing tremendous talent at West Bluefield, isn't he? I mean, he's like, I just laugh every time he posts a photo. He's with Greg Madison now in Ohio State, and Ryan Day and Nick Saban. And I mean, all these bigwigs are coming in. But and
I want to know where all these people were when I went to West Bluefield. Our football team was awful.
My friend Justin Schultz was the starting quarterback.
They were
the Jewish quarterback.
Awful. Our basketball team was decent, but our football team was awful when I was there. Now they're
didn't have Ron Bellamy. No Ron Bellamy.
I know. Right. I think their coach was like the middle school counselor or something. It was ridiculous.
Guidance counselor, lunch lady, and then football.
Yeah, I know exactly. Exactly.
All right, I want to get into the Dan Leach one-on-one starring Angelique Chengelis in 1 second, but I want to mention this at least a couple times during the show. You obviously are an incredible writer. We all love reading when you write, but you also have written 2 books. You wrote Michigan Man, Jim Harbaugh, and 100 Michigan to do for Michigan fans before they die. I'm guessing these days Amazon's a great place to get them, right?
Yeah, I think so. Isn't that terrible? I should know. Yeah, I think Amazon, definitely Amazon.
It's not like people are walking into Barnes & Noble right now. That's not a good idea. But please check. I have read the Jim Harbaugh book. It's excellent. And I've read parts of the 100 Things Michigan fans should do before they die. They're both great books. And I want to get you some sales tonight. Sales.
I'll buy you dinner. Oh, where'd he go?
I think I just lost. Can you guys hear me?
We can hear you. We can't. But we can't.
It says I lost. And there we go. You know, the internet, as we know, Angelique and Dave knows this too. With everyone at home, the internet is not what it used to be. So I've got to deal with things on the fly. All right, Angelique, are you ready? Dave has spent at least 5 hours putting these questions.
At least, yes. At least.
I have no idea what these. Oh, your hair looks great. I have no idea.
This is my pandemic hair.
But let's get into it. It's a Dan Leach one-on-one starring the amazing and wonderful Angelique Chengelis. Here we go with question number 1. All right, what do you got, Dave?
All right, Angelique. Question number 1. Bad weather postponed the SpaceX rocket launch the other day. So if you could, I think it's going to happen on Saturday now, if the weather allows.
Yes.
If you could put together a dream crew, dead or alive, to be in the SpaceX rocket, who would you choose?
How many do you get, Dave?
Do I get to go?
You get as many as you want. I would say probably 4.
What
going.
About oxygen?
Am I going?
They're going to take all the oxygen. Yeah, you're going. You're going.
I'm going.
You're going. Yes.
Well, I have to tell you, I saw a shuttle launch when I was covering Daytona one year at 4 a.m. and went, and it was remarkable. It was really something else. Who would be in my shuttle? Well, I mean, Roger Federer. He'd be in it. I would have Johnny Bench. I would have definitely not Wojo. Wojo's not coming. Because he eat all the food.
He is in love with you. Is that going to hurt his feelings? Because he is in love with you.
Yeah, right. Yeah. No, he would eat everything. We wouldn't have any food. We wouldn't be able to survive all the time in space. So,
case of butter butter's going to be fine. Space butter butter.
I would take. I'm a huge. I read a lot of World War II, and I just finished the new book on Winston Churchill. So I think I'd invite Winston Churchill, and I would. One guy I interviewed for a NASCAR story who fascinated. He was just unbelievable. Was Chuck Yeager, and I mean he was just electric. And I think of the things that man did. And it was 97, and I happened to be talking to Lloyd Carr that summer. He's like asking me what I was doing, and I said, "Oh, I just talked to Chuck Yeager." The phone got quiet. Lloyd stopped speaking, and in a very soft voice, he said, "He was my childhood hero."
Really? Wow.
I said, "Here's his phone number. Why don't you call him?" And they did. He called them, and they tried to set something up before the Rose Bowl that year, the 97 going into the 98 Rose Bowl, and it didn't work out, but that was pretty cool to be able to make that connection for Lloyd. And so someone like Chuck Yeager would be cool. And, I think we talked about it going in, I like cool guy. Dale Earnhardt was so cool. He was one of the coolest athletes I've ever covered. And I know you're not going to know this, but she's my favorite, Jane Austen, Pride and Prejudice writer. Oh yeah, you love Jane Austen. You love Jane Austen.
I can't top that crew.
Can I add one more? I want Tom Hanks. I want Tom Hanks in there too.
All right. You've got to have Tom Hanks, right? Yes.
He's Mr. America. So for me, this came to mind because I don't know if you like history, Angelique, like I do. Do you watch that Grant series on the History Channel?
I'm watching it. I watched the first one. I taped the other 2. I haven't watched the next 2, and then I've been watching the Roosevelts on PBS too. So I love that stuff.
He's a fascinating guy. So I want to bring U.S. Grant up. JFK for sure. I've got to have. I'm single, so a female presence. Katy Perry's coming as well. Eddie Vedder, the lead singer of Pearl Jam. By the way, you mentioned Chuck Yeager. I remember watching The Right Stuff like way too much as a kid, and it was one of the rare movies that had an intermission. So like my dad, we had like 2 VHS tapes. You put the tape 1 in, intermission time. Tape 2. It's like 3.5 hours. But definitely Eddie Vedder, the lead singer of Pearl Jam. And then I'll go with an athlete. And listen, Wolverines, GOAT, Tom Brady. So there's my.
Oh, yeah, there you go.
Katy Perry could just associate with me, though. She couldn't talk to anybody else.
Yeah.
JFK's got Jackie out.
Well, she's gonna have to bring her. She's gonna have to bring her daughter with her. So.
Yeah, hey, I love the question. Dave, question 2.
That is a good question.
So question 2: a Toronto man said he was surprised and confused when a package showed up at his home containing a product that he had ordered 8 years earlier. The package included a tube of Brill cream, a hairstyling product that he had ordered in 2012, along with an invoice dated for that year. Have you ever ordered if you ever had anything close to this happen where you ordered something and it showed up years later and you forgot about it?
No, but I will tell you, Dave, that I am an online shopper. I do not enjoy shopping. So I online shop, and I sometimes have no idea what I bought. So boxes come to my house and it's a big surprise. So no, I've never had that happen, but I do. Sometimes I look, I'm like, what was my problem? What am I buying? And it's always kind of fun to get the box on the front step, but I don't think I've ever had anything delivered late to me like that.
That's crazy that it took 8 years. I've had friends that have been like 6 or 7 months, not 8 years. But I do remember ordering something back in the earlier days of the internet. It wasn't from like an Amazon or anything. And it was a video game from like one of those like magazines, Nintendo magazine you call and like, I want this, and you, like trade your games in. And it did take like 2 months, and I was very angry. But that's like 2 months, 8 years. I hope we got like free credits for, I don't know, forever. That's insanity. All right, Dave, question 3.
Question 3, staying on the Canada kick. An Ontario man donned 260, you're hearing me right, 260 T-shirts at the same time to raise money for his children's school and break a Guinness World Record. What Guinness World Record do you think you could break, Angelique?
Let's see. Is there one that's like the most annoyed by Wojo category? That one easily. That would be.
Yes,
how about most Diet Cokes consumed in a day? I think I can challenge for that.
Well, Tony Paul already wanted you to break some for him, so we'll have to share together.
Yeah.
Now, some might know this because it was brought up incessantly on the air by Jeff Lesson and others, but I did come close to breaking the world record for living in a hotel the longest. I was staying at on Orchard Lake Road when I first came back to Michigan. I actually was working at 97.1 the ticket while I was there for a little while, and I finally got my own places. And I was coming up on 8 years. I missed it by like 7 months. The longest hotel stay was this woman, I think it was like some Southern American country, Brazil or whatever it was. And it was like 8 years and a month. I was close. But if I could break any Guinness Book of World Records, it would probably be staying up without any, like, obviously I don't do drugs anymore. I'm 9 years sober, but staying up for a certain amount of time without going to sleep. Because I think that I'd have a chance of that, guys. When maybe 2 straight weeks, I'd go insane. All I need is like some Mountain Dew in my Michigan cup, maybe a monster or 2, and I'd be good. So that's what I would break. All right, Dave, question 4.
Question 4. So Josh Gad, the actor, is bringing together the cast of the Lord of the Rings film series. On Wednesday, the actor shared a trailer for his Sunday's forthcoming episode of his Reunited Apart web series. What movie cast would you like to bring together in one big giant Zoom call?
Ooh, that would be real. That's a really good. That's a really good question.
Dave occasionally does a good job on these. I'm very proud of
him. You know what? I would do the Anchorman cast.
Oh, that'd be cool.
One of them just passed away, right? That'd be fun. I love Will Ferrell.
That would be great. My apartment smells of rich mahogany. I have many leather-bound books. Merlin Olsen comes around from time to time. That's a great answer. For me, that's so I'd have to go Back to the Future. Doc Brown, Marty McFly, Leah Thompson, because it's one of my all-time favorite movies. I mean, everyone knows I'm a Star Wars nut, but that seems like too obvious of an answer. Yeah. But I think I'd do Back to the Future because it's been such an important part of my life. Mm-hmm. And I want to go back in time, and I want Gray's Sports Almanac because we all know I need to find Biff and Stupid Kane. Gray's Sports Almanac. All right, Dave, hit it out of the park as we always do with question 5.
I know this question is going to really disappoint Dan, but the Doobie Brothers are postponing their 50th anniversary tour. The rock band announced Tuesday on Instagram that they are rescheduling the tour in 2021 due to the pandemic. Angelique, has the pandemic caused you to miss any big concerts, events, trips? Have you missed out on anything due to the pandemic?
Well, I'm a huge Green Day fan, and I had tickets. I had 8 tickets. I bought 1 ticket to see them at Comerica. I've seen them the last few tours, and they're great. I saw them at the Fillmore a couple of years ago, and that was amazing in a small venue. So, yeah, that got canceled, and I was pretty bummed out about it. And there were a couple other shows. That's Tony Paul and I were talking about all the concerts we were thinking about save a lot of money this year because we won't be going. But there were a lot. But that was the biggest thing I was going to miss. And I like to travel in the summer, but I hadn't planned any trips because this is about when I would have been planning them. So only Green Day.
2 for me, and it's funny. I have to leave myself reminders or I forget stuff because I'm so nuts. So it just came up my phone. I wanted to go see The Weeknd. I was going to go see The Weeknd at LCA. It was in July. His new album was incredible, by the way. And my dad and I already had seats to Roger Waters, who I've seen many times. But it's just brutal that we're not going to have concerts for a while. And I can't wait for them to come back. But those are the ones that kill me. Dave, I believe, did you have a couple of tickets to Fish, your favorite band?
No. But what I did miss was our trip to Vegas for the first round of the NCAA tournament.
Oh yeah,
that's
that
right.
would have been fun, huh?
So that was disappointing.
Great job, Dave. Great answers, Angelique. That was fantastic. I do have a question for you from Jeffrey on the chat. He wants your I know that obviously it's a long way to go for this, but he wants your prediction for Michigan's record this season, if you wouldn't mind giving it to us.
That's bad because I haven't even really studied it. But I would say, I'm going to go again 9-10 wins. That's about where, they've been. And I think that's, I'm trying to think of the schedule offhand. Isn't that bad? I just haven't been thinking about it.
Hey, Angelique, I had to look it up myself right now because I forgot. Washington to start.
They're at Washington.
Washington, Ball State, Arkansas State, Wisconsin, Penn State, Michigan State are the first 6 games.
Yeah. Yeah, their biggest test will be Wisconsin and Penn State, of course. But I think that's reasonable. I actually think this is going to be a good team. I really do. It's young. I know we keep talking about quarterbacks and not just us. Everybody keeps. But to me, the biggest thing is the 4 offensive linemen they have to replace. That to me is way bigger than anything else. But I think that they've got better talent. Those young guys coming up on the offensive line than they have in a while. They look. I say this all the time. I haven't seen there were some vintage Michigan offensive lines I covered, and I have not seen. There have been some pieces here and there. You get a Taylor, Lewan 1 year, Schofield, but collective group. This group looks more like them. Size wise, athletic. They're athletic guys. So I think that they're going to be pretty good.
Yeah, I think that you look at that Washington game, and I think Washington is kind of a team that's been very. They're in a big one. Obviously with Sarkisian when he was there, and just what they've been able to do. Peterson did it. He walked away. If Michigan could go into a hostile Pac-10, that's a crazy stadium. A hostile Pac-10 environment on the road, and start that season off with a win. And then you've got Ball State, Arkansas State, and Wisconsin all at the Big House. I think that's a chance that maybe Michigan, as you mentioned, I agree they're going to be a good team. We'll see who the quarterback is. That's a huge part of it. They could really get on a roll early this year as opposed to what happened last year with that Wisconsin game, which really hurt them on the road early this season.
Well, the Washington game, there was a lot of conversation that would be a 9 a.m. start out west because Fox have some of these Pac-12 games. The Pac-12 wants to be on here at noon versus, late at night like they are here, and not, they don't get as many eyeballs late at night for some of those Pac-12 games. So, there was a lot of talk because I think Ohio State's out west too. They open their season, so they would want to have those games early. So but it is, you're right. It's a tough place to play. I covered that last time they played out there. It is tough for an East Coast team or Eastern time zone team to go out west. Not making excuses. just that's the way it is.
It's never easy.
But yeah, I think this would be a time to catch Washington. I think they're going to be down for sure. And I could see them winning there, coming back and doing just as he said.
Good friend of the program, Jonathan Goochstadt, says he wants to break the record for the longest received massage. He's a massage guy, so he wants to receive it this time.
That's a great idea.
A couple more things we want to do here. Angelique, can't thank you enough for joining us. You're the best.
No, it's been fun.
You're the actually my dad get mad if I said it in proper English, not the funnest. You're the most fun. So he always corrects me. It's Angelique and me, not Angelique and I. Enough, Dad. I know you were talking.
Funnest works for me.
Yes, it's that Michigan education of my father's that he wanted me to have. Sorry. Fancy food.
I went to Cincinnati. Sorry.
Hey, Bearcats, Bobby Huggins.
That's right.
So Kenyon Martin, if he didn't hurt himself, you guys
waffling flake, right? The waffling
just
flake.
Luke Pickle. So let's I want to bring in, I don't want to get depressing here, but you covered NASCAR. You still do. I mean, you covered it for a very long time. And I just we can just kind of watch this together to be apathetic together because it's very depressing. But I have a story that goes along with this. And this was obviously one of the biggest moments in the history of NASCAR for all the wrong reasons. What do you remember about this evening into night when the superstar of NASCAR sadly died? Dale
Earnhardt. I mean, I told you earlier, he was one of the coolest guys I've ever covered. He used to always call me Detroit whenever he'd see me, and I'd say Detroit. And it was, there were a lot of press covering Speed Weeks. At least at that time, there was more media there. And you decide whether you're going to go up in the press box or you're going to stay down in the infield. And because it's hard to get, if you're up there, it's hard to get down to the infield after the race. So I stay down there, and we're all sitting there and we watched the wreck, and everyone just it was definitely quiet in there. And I remember talking to my boss, and I kept saying, I think he's gone. I think that Dale Earnhardt has died. I mean, we didn't know. It was just, and the Halifax hospital is not that far from the track, so they rushed there, obviously. And it was just, when they finally came in and announced that Dale Earnhardt had passed, I mean, it was crushing. People, that's a long season. And a lot of those reporters cover all the races, and a couple of them started weeping in the press box, in the infield press room. Pardon me. And it was a gut punch. That was a time. I mean, I covered a lot of deaths at the track at that point. I mean, it was not IndyCar, the same thing. Even the boat races on the Detroit River, and you didn't ever think it was going to happen to someone like Dale Earnhardt, though. I mean, this guy was the
intimidator.
Yeah, I mean, he was invincible, and it was hard. It was really hard to watch that and to write it.
And you feel terrible too because you see the video. Michael Waltrip, Darrell Waltrip, his son, wins it, and this whole time we knew there was a crash, but it's the end of the Daytona 500, and no one thought that he was dead. And I remember I told you guys this earlier, that I was an intern for the great Dan Miller and Greg Cantor at Fox 2. And this is, infancy, not of the internet itself, but of sports websites. And I remember I was there, and Fox Sports' website initially said Dale Earnhardt dead. Then 2-3 minutes later pulled it down. They had me calling the track. No one knew what was going on. How early in the process did you know? Obviously, you knew something was wrong. But how early did you know that he was possibly, you said you thought we lost him. How long after the wreck was that?
I would say probably, because I think it was a couple hours before the announcement was made. I'd say midway through, because there was just no news. And the way everybody was really, they had clammed up other drivers. But the thing is, I mean, you've shown that replay. It did not look like a hard hit. That was the thing. It was like, I mean, you saw Ryan Newman this year. That wreck looked unbelievable.
I couldn't believe it.
And he walks away, not immediately, but the next day, basically. And you just watch it, and it was just, it's still hard to believe when I see that wreck that he did not survive that. And I think it was a couple hours, but it was definitely within the first hour. I remember calling the office and saying, I think that he's gone. And I had no feeling. No one told me that. It just was a gut feeling, just the way that people were responding and the way that Dale Earnhardt, people were talking about how he was reacting at the hospital. It was such a terrible, I mean, it's such a cliche, but it was such a tragedy.
No, it was. But you know what, Angelique, and you covered the sport for a long time, and Dave knows this too because he's covered the sport too. The blessing, even though there's never a blessing when a legend dies, but there's got to be a silver lining sometimes. And the blessing out of that.
I mean, he was, he had the open face helmet too. I mean, he wanted to be free in the car to drive the way he drives. And I saw it at Indy too. The wrecks, I forget what year it was. It was cold and the tires weren't warm, and there were 13 wrecks, I believe, early in the race. And from that, they learned that they needed to extend the foot boxes of these Indy cars because their feet were getting crushed because they were so close to the front. I mean, we've all seen a lot of changes in safety in motorsports, thankfully, because I'm telling you, early when I was covering those races, I would have knots in my stomach every time I get to the track because you just didn't know what happened. I mean, I saw fans, that one IndyCar race when the tire went up in the stands at MIS. I mean, I love the sport. I think the drivers, as you said earlier, they're phenomenal. These guys are really, they hang it out there on the edge all the time. And they're really fun to talk to. They're very interesting. But boy, it's a tough sport sometimes. And that was the toughest day.
Man, it was incredible. Well, let's go to this. Dave's going to love this because he calls me, "You're such a Michigan slap face painter."
I'm a Michigan fan too.
He is, but we're going to do this because this will show that I'm not always a Michigan slap, but it's going to lead. This is a very negative moment, but it's going to lead to Angelique's positive moments and great moments covering this. I can't believe I'm going to show this, but I guess I have to. Son of a bitch. All right. Just watch this nonsense. So obviously out there, you're there. I mean, everybody's there. I talk a lot of smack, Angelique. One of my good friends, Jay, was there, a big Spartan fan. He thought it was over. Everyone thought it was over. I had all this money on the game. I talked on the air for a week. And then I'm sitting there with my dad and my brother-in-law and a friend of ours. And that moment happened. My dad at the time was 69. Still in good shape, but he's not 69. He sprinted to the exit like he was a 15-year-old. I just sat there with my hands in my head, with my brother-in-law. I was cracking up because I didn't know what else to do. So that was obviously one of the more incredible moments you've ever covered. But I want to kind of flip it on its head. And instead of this nonsense, I want to talk about what the greatest moments that you've ever covered for, deal with your Michigan stuff. Angelique's top Michigan moments. Let's get rid of that nonsense play. That sucked. What would you say are your top 2 or 3 moments covering the team?
Well, it's funny. You know how coaches always say they remember the losses because they learned from them. I always remember the losses really do stand out for me because unbelievable ones that I've covered. Obviously the 97 season, that Ohio State game, the Rose Bowl was pretty amazing, but here's this undefeated team that, early in the season, if they didn't have that flip-flop in the Iowa game when Brian Greasy, your Denver Bronco, if he hadn't flipped the switch and become a different player in the second half, then that 97 season never happens. But that 98 game was unbelievable. And I remember being on the field and the fans had flooded the field. And I was getting a little claustrophobic and trying to get to the tunnel so I could get to the post game. And I don't know who did it, but someone behind me, some big person behind me, grabbed my collar, my coat, and pushed me forward and got me through that crowd. Whoever that angel was, I'll never forget that. That was.
I'm sorry. You're the angel. You're the angel.
Yeah, I'm the angel, but I needed my wings. Needed a. But obviously that Under the Lights game was pretty awesome. I know a lot of people
feel it.
That triple overtime game with Illinois, Richmond. I like defense, and that was just like. I like offense too, but that was just like insane. And I kept looking at Wojo saying, "Is anybody going to play defense in this game? Anybody?" But yeah, it's terrible because I do remember a lot of these the losses. But one game I was talking earlier, the '96 game in Columbus, that was a great Ohio State team, and the Sean Springs slip, and they make that play, they score, and Michigan ends up winning that game, and that was pretty pivotal because that certainly drove them into the '97 season. Differently, but isn't it bad? All those games are so early, and I don't think I've seen a lot of games that are memorable on the positive side for Michigan lately.
Well, you were also there. I thank God I was at boarding school. Someone just brought this up on the chat. Jeffrey brought it up on the chat. Because if I had seen this live, I would have been at the game. I would have probably been. I was always depressed after losses for a week anyway. Would have been a month. But in 1994, Rocket, left. Miracle of Michigan. Yeah. Michigan wins that game. They could have won the national championship. And stupid. By the way, people don't know. Some people don't know this. You do, and Dave does. But obviously, the play was to Michael Westbrook. But people forget that Ray Caruth was in the end zone on that play.
Right.
And Cordell Stewart, one of the 2 or 3 athletes ever in my career that was ever rude to me. He throws the pass. That you're right. It's like those that are the ones that stick with you, aren't they? Those ones that kill you.
Absolutely. They're. I remember them again. It's like thinking of it as someone writing on the game. I just remember it was still in the day where you had to plug in your phone, your your push button phone into the back, and take the cord out, put the phone into the computer. And I had written my story, and I had my little cord going in the computer. And as soon as I saw him release the ball, I unplugged it, and I just knew he was gonna take that.
Oh. I have to play that on my shows sometimes, and I wasn't going to cue that video up, but I still, when I see it, even though I wasn't watching it live, I didn't have it taped. I was out at boarding school in California. I still like. I'm not an angry person, but I lose it. I lose it. It was just terrible. And back then, you couldn't lose. There was no +1.
Right.
There was no. If you lost, you were done. And that was week 3, I think. And I think wasn't Colorado 2 and Michigan was 3. I wanted to throw up. By the way, for me, the ultimate, I think it's Michigan fans' ultimate if they're my age. We've seen a lot of great games. You mentioned that Notre Dame night game, by the way, when they were playing Seven Nation Army by the White Stripes, and I was there with my pom-poms, you could feel the electricity like never before. That first night game against that was incredible. But being there in January '98 in the most beautiful setting in sports, aside from maybe Augusta, to see them win the national title with Dave's boy, Brian Greasy, and Lloyd Carr, that was, I don't know, if they win the national championship again, it'll feel great. I don't know if I could ever top that because I was 20. All my college friends were out there. I got 40-yard line seats, like row 35 for like $350 total.
Wow.
And they were going for $1,000 from a Washington State couple. Like everything worked out that trip.
Wow.
Except I won $5,000 at a casino and arena, Angelique, and then I lost it all. But at least I won it first. That's the ultimate one for me. Is there a better one that you could think of that you've covered? I mean, it's the national championship.
No, I mean that season was. I really feel like that was the best year of work I did. I felt like I never stopped. It was just,
You're right.
Even after when the polls came out and they split the national championship with Nebraska, with the coaches poll, and I remember calling coaches to see how they voted because I had a list of suspects that I thought were the ones that voted Michigan down, and Bobby Bowden was listed in the phone book. I called him. He goes, "Nope, it wasn't me." I called John Cooper, and he's like, he got really nervous, and he's like, I voted him 1A, 1B. He split his vote. And then I finally found Phil Fulmer, who was target number 1 in my mind, and he was coaching at the East-West Shrine game. I got him in his hotel room, and he just laughed, and he said, no, I didn't do it. And it's just the way he laughed. I thought, okay, we'll see.
And he voted, people, if you don't remember, he voted 15th, right? 15th. He is an a-hole, and he's mad about Dave's boy Peyton Manning not winning the Heisman against Woodson. Woodson was the best defensive player of the last 30 years. Get over it, Coach.
He was really upset. I'll never forget that Heisman Trophy after the ceremony. I didn't know Phil Fulmer, but he knew I was from Detroit, and I think as Knoxville, so the guy who was covering Tennessee at the time. He sent me a quote. I sent him something beforehand, and I think it got the Tennessee people really fired up about Woodson. And I remember, and I just wish I could remember what he said to me. I was just so stunned. He just starts pointing at me, and he goes, "You tell those people in Detroit." And I don't remember what he told me, but he was furious, that he should win. And I'm like, okay, I'll tell them. But that was crazy. And yeah, I've always thought Phil Fulmer was the one.
And I don't care what people say. And Vegas would have had Michigan as about a touchdown favorite on a neutral field. That Nebraska team was a full sympathy vote for Tom Osborne. The Wolverines had a better defense. Yes, Nebraska would have had a better offense, but they played in a weaker conference. You tell me if I'm wrong. Michigan, Dave, I'll give you a second here. Michigan wins that game 31-14 if they played on neutral field.
Wow.
Wasn't there a game where was that the season where Scott Frost kicked the ball or something, or they got the extra?
They got the extra down.
It was the extra down, and so they should have lost that game anyway. So it
that was when Michigan was beating up Penn State. It was that day.
So it would have been Michigan anyway.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Garbage. All right, I want to get a question to you, Angelique, before we wrap things up here. We got our cool house items and that guy lurking behind you in a second.
Oh, God.
The D-line's got a great question. We'll get to it in a second. But this is a really cool question. You always commanded respect, and it's never been about gender. But we know that things have changed and things were bad for a minute back in the day when it came to women covering sports. The D-line wants me to ask you, do you feel that women are gaining more respect covering sports as time has gone on? And when you started, I'm sure you were part of a much smaller group than you are now.
Yeah, no, definitely smaller. And I got to be honest. I've never had any issues. I had a couple when I was an intern, and at the Detroit News, I got sent to do a lot of baseball, which I loved, and until that summer, and I would get sent into the opposing team locker rooms, and I swear, on a Bible, whatever you want, I never looked around in the locker room. I don't enjoy being in a locker room, and I would wait in the corner for the baseball players. And, I remember I did an early story on Dave Rigetti once, and I was walking in after the game. He pitched great, and I wanted to ask him a question. He's about to pull his pants down, and I just yelled across the locker room. I just said, "Stop!" And he did. He stopped, and he pulled it back on so I could interview him. So that was, in terms of that kind of stuff, that was the only time. I've never really had any issues. But yes, I think it's better, and I think that there are more women in the sport and covering sports. Pardon me. And, television, obviously a lot, and newspapers and online publications. So, I think the future is bright. I just hope that there are newspapers and media outlets out there. So hopefully.
I hope there's radio stations too. I mean, I'm sure there will be.
Exactly.
Otherwise, that's why we got the task force and an amazing guest like Angelique Chengelis on.
Yes.
All right. So as we always do, we'll save you for a second because you're the special guest. We'll start with Dave. Dave normally brings some kind of a crazy Broncos memorabilia. As he's wearing his hat, I think he's got signed jock straps for different players. Now,
nice.
Dave,
there's no signed jock straps. Today's house item is for anybody who might want to binge, being that we're still at the stay at home order, and this is a great series called The Shield with Michael Chiklis, and it's one of his probably. I think one of the top 5 greatest, series that I've ever seen. And it has a really good ending. It ends very well. You get a lot of people that get upset when these series come to an end. They don't think it's ended properly. So if you want to check this out, The Shield, complete series, very good watch.
Great series. My dad loves it. All right. So, Angelique, you seem like you have a great little, we'll call it a woman's cave, if you will.
Yeah, it is.
Now, everyone's been talking about the guy behind you. You obviously, the three of us know that it's one of the greatest athletes ever, but let everyone know who that is and what else we got there for you to share.
Yeah, that's Roger Federer. I love Roger Federer. So on a big birthday, when I turned 30 a couple of years ago, my brother had that made for me for my 30th. And I thought you're turning 30 next year. Oh,
was that giving bad information?
I appreciate that, but I've already turned 30.
That crack research staff you have there hired.
Yeah, I know.
I thought you'd like this.
Oh, yes, the cowbell.
But do you know where it's from?
Wait, is that from Yost?
No, you're close. It was, I don't know why I thought it was so funny when Rich Rod was getting the team ready to play Mississippi State. And, they had
yes.
And so they were practicing in Glick Fieldhouse, pardon me, and he's got the trainers and stuff they're going crazy with these bells over the guys as they're trying to call plays and stuff. And I wanted one of those bells, so John Falk gave me one. So I have one.
Awesome. So crazy random story. I was living in Atlanta doing a previously national syndicated show I was doing on Sirius, and I was living in Atlanta, but it was out on the West Coast, and there was a station that I think it's 680 The Score, the big sports station in Atlanta, and they had this scavenger hunt to win Final Four tickets. And what you had to do is you could go to any of the ACC or SEC schools. You got certain points for doing stuff. Like we had to take a picture with I think Mark Richt. We had to all these crazy things. The one for Mississippi State in Starkville was we had to go to the practice field and find 100 cowbells and take a picture. It was worth like 1,000 points. So we did it. We went. By the way, we destroyed the team. There was like 2 teams, me and my friend, and this wife and husband. We destroyed them by like 3,000 points. But we had to get like 100 cowbells, and then we had to keep them. Like we went and bought them from a hardware store. It was ridiculous. But that's a great cowbell. By the way, my friend Ben Redmond, my old neighbor back in Farmington Hills, shout out to Rolling Oaks. In our college years, when he was a student, he used to be the cowbell guy in Michigan Stadium. I guess they passed that off to people.
Yeah.
He was the cowbell guy. Now it's like one of the Cape Crusader guys. So for me, in honor of you and myself being a great Wolverine fan, and Dave, because he's a fan too, my dad gave this to me for my birthday this year. One of his nurses gave him this.
Oh, wow.
It's a hockey flag, but it's a football hockey flag. So it's like a jersey. Isn't that cool?
That's
so
really
I got
cool.
that for the birthday, and I'm hoping we play some football and hockey and everything. And I do have one more thing that I wanted to show because I've really been missing arcades and Dave & Buster's. So I'm just a 15-year-old trapped in like a 43-year-old's body. I just turned 43 last week, Angelique, and I called it the 30th anniversary of my bar mitzvah.
That's right,
so that's all I'm going to reveal. But the last time I went there, I got a poop pen. And so I just can't wait. Dave likes to go and win stuff for his nephew or his Al Jeff's daughter and my nephew, or the always. So it just reminded me that someday we'll get back to going to arcades. That's for sure. Before we go, I want to let everyone know again to please get your books. Of course, Michigan Man, Jim Harbaugh, and 100 Things for Michigan fans to before they die. I'll give you first crack here, Angelique, for a parting shot to all the final people. And by the way, before you start, I've got one more surprise to send us out here. This is pretty much, aside from maybe Comfortably Numb, one of the greatest songs ever. Maybe this is the second greatest song. The Wolverine. Wait, did I click? Can you guys hear that?
Michigan marching band.
Sort of.
Can you guys? All right, good. Because I think I always get to remember to click the audio thing. Here we go. Can you hear that now? Doesn't get any better than the Michigan fight song. All right, Angelique, your parting shots.
Well, my parting shot is selfishly, I hope there's football, but I want it to be safe. There's nothing I love more than covering the game at the end of every year. I grew up in Cincinnati, know the rivalry I've known it for a long time. And I hope that there's football, but it's got to be safe as possible.
Beautifully said. Dave Rieger, your parting shots. And once again, a great job on the one-on-one. Dave is really coming through on these, Angelique.
Appreciate that. It's great to have Angelique on. I'll say the same thing that I say at the end of every show, which is my favorite quote from my favorite TV football coach, Coach Eric Taylor, Friday Night Lights: "Clear eyes, full hearts, can't lose."
Angelique's going to love that. Well, I want to, as I said to start this show, thank you for what you do for so many of us, not just in the business, but fans of Michigan and NASCAR, and you've always been such an inspiration and so kind to me. I have a tremendous amount of respect for you. You put up with Wojo, which is like a job in itself, but I just think that you have been one of the great people that have covered sports. Not just, I'm going to go global here, not just Michigan, but anywhere, but especially in this area. So thank you for what you do. And I hope for our sake and your sake, we do have football back, because we all love reading and listening to your work. That's for sure.
I appreciate it, Dan. Thank you. And thanks, Dave. Those were great questions earlier. And
thank you.
Likewise, Dan. Thank you.
All right. Well, as I always like to say, thank you. Wash your hands, spread love, not hate. Be there for each other. And for the great Dave Rieger and Angelique Chengelis of Dan Leach, thanks for watching the Task Force. Hail to the victors, the leaders, and best. Yes. Until next time, we love you all.